director of the South Asia Center at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. And it is my great pleasure to work with my colleagues at the Council to bring this event together in partnership with the Embassy of Bangladesh in Washington. Over the past 2 years, as the world has slowly awakened to the incredible crisis that has emerged in Myanmar, in Burma, through the persecution of the Rohingya people, the particular leadership role of Bangladesh over not just the last couple of years, but in fact over the last decade, in supporting that refugee population that has flooded into its country in search of sanctuary, of refuge, has slowly begun to be recognized, or arguably not nearly as much as it deserves. Bangladesh is now home to an incredibly large population of people in desperate need. And it has been trying to honor its obligations to this refugee population to the best of its ability. Nothing that has been done is necessarily perfect, nor should it be expected to be, given the scale and severity of the crisis. But we are very grateful to the embassy and to the ambassador for being willing to engage in a frank and forthright conversation about what the government seeks to do, what the future holds, and what he hopes the international community will do to support Bangladesh so that it can continue to support this refugee population. The lessons of this conversation could not be more applicable given the refugee crisis unfolding currently in the context of Afghanistan, the long-term refugee crisis that has emerged out of North Africa, and indeed the incredible refugee crisis that continues to affect the United States on its southern border. Many countries in the world have a great deal to learn from Bangladesh's experience with its refugee populations from Burma, not least to see the compassion and humanity with which it has attempted to solve this problem. To moderate this conversation, we have asked Dr. Rudabeh Shahid, a non-resident senior fellow of the Atlantic Council, to join us. Dr. Shahid has a PhD in political science from Durham University. She's been a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of York, where she has been singularly involved in the Rethinking Civil Society project at the University of York. Our featured guest is Ambassador Shahidul Islam, Ambassador of Bangladesh to the United States. He has a long and distinguished career serving his country in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including previous positions as Ambassador to France, to BIMSTEC, and we know that this stop in Washington is just another stop in what will be a long and successful career in foreign service. Ambassador, we welcome you. We are grateful for this partnership with your embassy and with you. And without further ado, let me hand it over to Dr. Rudabeh Shahid to lead this conversation.
Hello, welcome everybody, and thank you, Dr. Nuruddin, for asking me to moderate this very important session on the Rohingya crisis, where I have the pleasure and privilege to discuss with His Excellency Ambassador M. Shahidul Islam regarding Bangladesh's stand on the crisis and ways of looking forward. At this point in time, Bangladesh hosts over 1 million Rohingya refugees in the southeastern part of the country. And this issue needs further attention from the international community for reaching some kind of a solution. So I would like to start off this conversation with quite a broad question. So far, we haven't heard of many COVID-19 cases in the Rohingya camps or within the host community in Cox's Bazar. We would like to know from you, Mr. Ambassador, about the measures that the Bangladesh government is taking to protect the Rohingya refugees and the host community during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. And we can start.
Thank you very much, Senior Director, Dr. Irfan Nuruddin, Ambassador Usman Siddiqui, Dr. Rudabeh Shahid, Professor Ali Riaz. It is a great privilege and honor for me to participate in today's discussion on the Rohingya issue, and I want to start by thanking the Atlantic Council for having this important conversation. Without being repetitive, let me briefly go through the origin of the Rohingya crisis. The Rohingya crisis has its origin in the decades-long discrimination and oppression meted out to this Muslim ethnic minority community by the Myanmar authorities and the local Buddhist majority population. For centuries, Rohingyas have been living in the Rakhine state of Myanmar, bordering Bangladesh. They have their own language and culture, and they identify themselves as the descendants of Arab traders and other groups who have been in the region for generations. When the persecution in Myanmar becomes intolerable, tens of thousands of Rohingyas cross the Bangladesh-Myanmar border to take refuge in the southern part of Bangladesh. In 1978, Myanmar military drove about 200,000 Rohingyas across the border into Bangladesh. These people were repatriated to Myanmar through negotiation. Again, in 1991-92, more than 250,000 Rohingyas fled to Bangladesh to escape persecution. After negotiations, a part of these people could be sent back to Myanmar, although thousands of them stayed back in Bangladesh. The largest and the most recent exodus took place in August 2017, when some 700,000 Rohingyas fled widespread genocide by the Myanmar security forces. According to Médecins Sans Frontières, at least 6,700 Rohingya were killed. Amnesty International says the Myanmar military also raped and abused Rohingya women and girls in thousands. According to Human Rights Watch, at least 288 villages were partially or totally burned down in northern Rakhine state. The atrocities committed by Myanmar authorities in 2017 was described by the United Nations as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, whereas both Myanmar military officials and the civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi denied the genocide allegation. They have instead tried to portray the Rohingyas either as illegal Bengalis or Muslim terrorists to justify their atrocities. When other neighboring countries closed their doors to the Rohingya fleeing persecution, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina decided to give them shelter on humanitarian grounds. The fresh arrivals in 2017, plus the earlier displaced Rohingyas, together numbering 1.1 million, are staying in the overcrowded makeshift camps in Cox's Bazar district of Bangladesh. The local community also welcomed the persecuted Rohingyas and extended all-out assistance and support. It was expected that the Myanmar authorities would take them back, as they had done in earlier occasions. In November 2017, the government of Bangladesh entered into a bilateral arrangement with the Myanmar government for repatriation of the Rohingyas. The officials from both sides met on several occasions to begin the process of repatriation. However, the actual repatriation of these people never took place, owing to Myanmar's failure to create conducive conditions for the return, including ensuring safety, security, and commitment for integration of the returnees in the Myanmar society on a permanent basis. It increasingly became evident that the Myanmar side was actually using the negotiation with the Bangladesh side as a ploy to evade international criticism, and they never had any genuine intention to receive their nationals back. For the Rohingyas, they had no confidence in the Myanmar authorities because it was the same authorities who had been directly involved in their persecution, murder, and rape. The lack of progress in repatriation of the Rohingyas complicated the issue. The indefinite presence of the huge Rohingya population in a small area outnumbered the local population and adversely affected their economic opportunities. As a result, the initial goodwill for the persecuted Rohingyas began to evaporate. Furthermore, the Rohingyas increasingly became involved in human trafficking, drug trafficking, and other criminal activities. In the absence of any visible signs of early repatriation, the frustration among the Rohingyas have made them susceptible to radicalization. The recent killing of Rohingya leader Mohibullah, as well as the murder of 7 other Rohingyas in the Cox's Bazar camps, have become a matter of serious concern for the Bangladeshi authorities. The continued stay of over 1 million Rohingyas was also creating enormous strain on our economy, society, and environment, whose monetary value has been estimated as at US dollar 1.21 billion a year. Every year, about 30,000 children are adding to the Rohingya population in the camps. Humanitarian assistance from the international community is also in the decline. These problems have compelled the government of Bangladesh to take certain measures which have attracted some criticism. Number one, in view of the deteriorating law and order situation in the camps, security has been beefed up, which has been criticized as securitization of Rohingya camps. Also, measures undertaken to prevent trafficking in persons have been projected as limiting freedom of movement. Secondly, the government spent US dollar 350 million to develop living facilities in Bhashan Char, an island involving to shift 100,000 Rohingyas from the overcrowded camps in Cox's Bazar. Already some 18,500 Rohingyas have been shifted to Bhashan Char. The international aid community initially refused to work in Bhashan Char, and their reluctance even fueled a misperception campaign against Bangladesh's treatment of Rohingyas. On the whole, the international media and the human rights community shifted its focus from safe and dignified repatriation of the persecuted Rohingyas, arguably the most persecuted people on the earth, and they rather concentrated on the daily life of the Rohingyas in Bangladesh. Then came the Bashanchar Agreement. On 9 October, an MOU was concluded between the government of Bangladesh and UNHCR relating to Bashanchar. The MOU notes that Bashanchar is a temporary arrangement, which has always been the position of the government of Bangladesh. It is a temporary arrangement for the forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals. It provides clear framework for ensuring the voluntariness of their relocation in Bashanchar, their safety and security, their movement for day-to-day activities, their engagement in livelihood activities, their access to essential health services, vocational training and education, and unhindered telecommunication services. As per the MOU, the government of Bangladesh also undertakes to maintain the civilian and humanitarian character of the island and put in place disaster risk reduction measures. The MOU on Bhashan Char recognizes the ground realities and challenges that the government of Bangladesh faces in managing such a huge population. This MOU also addressed some of the criticisms of the government as regards their basic human rights and welfare. So now that the agreement has been signed on Bashanchar, what next? In fact, that is the main pivot of today's discussion. Now that the Bashanchar agreement has been addressed, it has addressed almost all concerns and demands of the humanitarian community. the international community now can help the persecuted Rohingyas in two ways, I would say. First, they can provide greater humanitarian support for supporting livelihood activities of the Rohingyas in the Bhashan Char and make their temporary stay in Bangladesh more comfortable, human, and dignified. And secondly, and most importantly, the international community now can focus more on the permanent solution to the Rohingya issue by ensuring their return to their home states in Myanmar in safety and dignity. I would like to dedicate a separate chapter on the role of the United States in resolving the Rohingya crisis. The United States has remained the #1 country in terms of extending humanitarian assistance to the forcibly displaced Rohingya sheltered in Bangladesh. The United States have taken initiatives to mobilize the international community by bringing the issues before the UN Security Council. Bangladesh believes that the United States can do more to mobilize international pressure on Myanmar to end the Rohingya crisis. The United States can persuade its friends in ASEAN and Quad to distance themselves from the Myanmar military forces so that they refrain from culpability in the genocide. The United States may bring the Rohingya issue on the G7 summit agenda to show the strong resolve of the international community for early solution of the Rohingya crisis. The United States may cancel all types of preferential treatment, including GSP facilities enjoyed by Myanmar. Apart from reintroducing all pre-2016 sanctions, entities involved in trade with Myanmar also need to be discouraged from engaging with Myanmar. The United States can also speed up determination of genocide and crimes against humanity against the Rohingyas as it has promised earlier. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate the cardinal principle of Bangladesh's foreign policy, which is friendship to all and malice to none, as propounded by the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I have visited Myanmar on a number of occasions in my capacity as the Secretary General of BIMSTEC and was really impressed by the warmth and hospitality of the Myanmar people. In a sense, there is nothing inherently wrong with any religion, race, or nationality. The problem emanates when these identities are used to generate malice and hatred for political or economic reasons. We would like to call upon the international community to bring the traders of malice to justice if we were to establish a rule-based international order. So I could not help giving you this background. And you asked me about what Bangladesh government is doing to save this community from a COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, Bangladesh government is running a vaccination campaign together with the development aid groups. And also to some extent, whenever needed, the government has imposed a lockdown so that it does not spread in the camps.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for giving us a very comprehensive overview of the situation in the Rohingya refugee camps in Bangladesh, and also what the government of Bangladesh is, how it's trying to cooperate with the international community, and also how the government is working with the international community to help the refugees and the host community of Cox's Bazar. So now I have a two-step question. So the first question, you've already touched upon it. So before the coup in Myanmar, we heard about plans to repatriate the Rohingya refugees to their native Rakhine state. Since the coup, what conversations have been happening between the governments of Bangladesh and the new Myanmar government regarding repatriation? The second part of my question is, at this point in time, most Rohingyas are in Bangladesh, and we heard about the killings of 7 people in the Rohingya refugee camps in Cox's Bazar, in an Islamic seminary, a madrasa. The killings came amid mounting tensions after a Rohingya refugee community leader was shot dead outside his office a few weeks ago. And you've already touched upon that. So what measures have the Bangladesh security establishment taken to ensure that such incidents are not repeated in the future? So these are my first few questions. Thank you, Ambassador.
Yeah, number one is the discussion what we were having with the Myanmar side before the military coup. That discussion we tried from our side to continue, but it seems that we have not been very successful in maintaining liaison contact with the present government. We have also tried tripartite arrangement which exists between Bangladesh, China, and Myanmar. That has also not been very effective to resume discussion with the Myanmar authorities. And I have already said in my initial statement that it looks like that the Myanmar government lacks sincerity. And there is a need for the international community to really put pressure on the Myanmar government to create congenial atmosphere in Rakhine state so that the Rohingyas staying in Bangladesh, they become willing to go back unless you can create the condition which guarantees safety, security of the Rohingya population staying in Bangladesh, we cannot really forcibly send them back. So this is an area where the effort of Bangladesh government alone will not be enough. The international community has to come forward with more vigor and more determination. The second question that you have asked me about the killing in camps, yes, we have been telling the international community that this is a problem. If you think that this is our own problem of Bangladesh, it's going to be wrong. It is a problem which can have ramification for regional security and also beyond that. And we see that we were correct in flagging this concern before. We have been trying our best to beef up security and vigilance in the Rohingya camps. And as I had mentioned that whenever we try to enhance security, there are some sections who would come and say that possibly we are doing too much and we are obstructing the freedom of movement of the Rohingya population. So there must be a renewed urgency felt not only by the government of Bangladesh, but also our development partners and the donor community that safety and security of these people in the camp is very, very important. It is non-negotiable, and therefore it deserves the highest level of attention, not only from Bangladesh, but it should have the maximum support from our friends and allies.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for giving us an overview of the situation in the camps and also what Bangladesh is doing along with what the international community is doing. So which we would like more we would like to know more about. And in April, we also heard news about discussions between the government of Bangladesh and the new Biden administration regarding third country resettlement. How much progress has been made on that front? And in what ways can we expect US Bangladesh cooperation to address this crisis? You've already talked a little bit on this, but specifically, we would like to know about third country resettlement. And can you also tell us about the role of regional players? You've already talked about China, but we would also like to know about Japan and India, and also the countries of the OIC, the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, in helping Bangladesh deal with this crisis. Thank you.
Yes. Normally, when there is a refugee situation, the solutions are generally found through three options. One is the return of the refugees or the displaced people to their homeland. That is perhaps is the uh, most mostly, I mean, that is the best way to resolve the refugee crisis or displacement crisis. The second option is local assimilation, which Bangladesh cannot because we are already a hugely overpopulated country and we cannot really sustain another 1 million people. So the third option could be the third country resettlement. It sounds good that there is a proposal or interest from our friends to explore the possibility of third country settlement. And based on the preliminary discussion, we did some study on the possibility of this possibility, how much it can serve in resolving our problem. So our experience tells us that between 2006 and 2010, um, uh, only 920 Rohingyas could be sent to third country settlement, resettlement program in the United States, Canada, then Australia, some Scandinavian countries. So that was the result of 4 years of discussion. And unless there is a generous and well-planned proposal on the third country resettlement, it can be counterproductive to go for third country resettlement because if you are taking 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 Rohingyas to some developed countries for third country resettlement, it may take 1 century maybe to resolve this problem. Whereas every year we are adding 30,000 children to the Rohingya camps. So it looks like that unless the international community understands the size, the enormity of the problem, and unless they are prepared with a full commitment to really meet the need, I mean, they can if they can really accommodate that kind of number of refugees, it is not very wise to go for third country resettlement program, because that will give you a little bit of comfort that you are doing something for the refugees, but in fact, you are not doing anything. And you also ask about the regional players. So to be frank, on this particular issue, the Rohingya population staying in Bangladesh, they have been persecuted. They need to go back to their country of origin. And there should be a permanent solution to this problem. The whole world appears to be behind Bangladesh, excepting that in the neighborhood there is some hesitation as regards full support to Bangladesh. We are very happy with the regional countries like India, Japan, and you said OIC, they have not taken any position against us. But we'll be more happy if they can come up more strongly in support of the position that Bangladesh has taken, which is to ensure safe and dignified return of the Rohingya population to their country of origin. Uh, and of course, we have seen recently that Japan has taken some action, the economic action, lesser trade and investment cooperation with Myanmar. That is a good sign, and we would encourage our friends to further expand and amplify what they are doing now. If you talk about OIC, first of all, I'd like to remember with great respect and gratitude the name of Gambia, which filed a case with the International Court of Justice. And the International Court of Justice has given an interim uh, verdict whereby it instructs the Myanmar authorities to refrain from genocidal activities. Now, we can also expect that other countries in the OIC would also come forward with similar commitment and compassion for not just for the fact that these people are Muslims, but they are also part of the human society, and they deserve some more attention and sympathy and support from all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for answering the questions on regional players and also about third country resettlement, how that is that can be a problem. Now, my next question to you, Mr. Ambassador, is about Bhashan Char. So, as you know, the UN and Bangladesh recently signed a deal to aid the relocation of Rohingya refugees to the Bashanchar island in the Bay of Bengal. As you know, the plans to relocate the refugees to this island have received much international attention. Can you tell us more about this agreement and what can we expect from this new deal between the UN and Bangladesh? And also the fact that the international community has a lot of concerns about this. So how can Bangladesh address it? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the conclusion of this Bashanchar MOU between the government of Bangladesh and even HCR is a positive development, because as I mentioned in my formal statement, that there was some concern on the part of the international community as to what the government is doing with the people in Bashanchar. Are they enjoying freedom of movement? Are they having livelihood opportunities and so on? So in this MOU, the government of Bangladesh has addressed, it has been very open to address all the demands and concerns from the international community, the humanitarian community, and everybody, all the stakeholders. It allows freedom of movement. It allows UNHCR and others to uh, undertake the programs to enhance the livelihood opportunity of Rohingyas. I think that is going to be a game changer, because uh, already the living condition in Bhashanchar is much better than the Cox's Bazar makeshift camps. Everybody knows that. The Eid community also knows that. But the one problem was that in Cox's Bazar area, the Rohingya population, they had some opportunities to run small business, or they could be employed in various informal sectors. So it is very important that we are able to create livelihood opportunity on the Bashanchar. And now that the government has allowed many of the things that the international community, the aid community was demanding, they should go back with bigger enthusiasm, more funds, and more resources to create livelihood opportunities for the displaced, unfortunate Rohingya people, to improve their living standard and make their stay in Bangladesh, though it's not permanent stay, but as long as they stay, that should be more comfortable and human. So that is what I think about the Bashanchar Agreement. And also, I think that this has also helped uh, take away certain amount of time from the international community to devote more attention to the uh, situation in Myanmar, because there was a time when we were hearing so much of criticism um, against the government of Bangladesh, who decided to give shelter to these persecuted people out of humanitarian consideration, and as if that we were doing, I mean, a sin by doing it, but we did not talk about the Myanmar authorities who actually carried out this persecution and who are refusing to take them back. So I think that the international community will be able to focus more on the permanent solution to the problem, that this temporary stay of Rohingyas in Bangladesh should end sooner rather than later, and they should be able to go back to their own country of origin.
So thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for those for answering those questions. But so before we open it up for the audience, I have one last question for you. So as you've rightly pointed out, Bangladesh has been on the front lines of the Rohingya refugee crisis and has given them shelter. And we would like to know about the economic breakdown. How much is the international community, roughly, in percentage terms, helping the government of Bangladesh each year, and how much does Bangladesh have to pay in very simple words out of its pocket? So, given your experience, do you think that the international community needs to do more to support refugees worldwide in general, and the Rohingyas in particular? Do you think the current global framework on refugee rehabilitation is adequate?
Yeah, thank you for identifying Bangladesh and as the frontline state in this Rohingya crisis, which is good, but which is an understatement, I would say, if you consider the amount of burden that we have taken. I'll just give you one example. We have given shelter to more than 1.1 million displaced Rohingyas, the Myanmar nationals in Bangladesh. Uh, Even after that, whenever there is a situation where in the high seas you find 50 or 60 Rohingyas, you don't send them to any country. You just ask Bangladesh to take them. They are not taken by Myanmar. They are not even accepted by the littoral countries. They always say that, okay, they should go to Bangladesh. So this is the extent of responsibility that we have taken out of our own volition, but then there must be burden sharing. And that's very important. I don't want to give you the figures of how much we are doing. I mean, I would leave it to the people who are more knowledgeable about it and who are directly involved in it. But I have given you two figures. One is that the government had to spend US dollar 350 million to develop the living condition in the Bhashan Char, and the annual uh, uh, economic and social and environmental pressure that we are sustaining from this presence of such a huge number of people in Cox's Bazar is estimated as 1.21 billion US dollar. Also, I'm not being able to give you the monetary figure, how much it takes for vaccination of such a huge amount of people. I'm not saying how much over expenditure, additional expenditure we are incurring because of additional security personnel that we have to mobilize to ensure safety and security in the area, or electric supply, construction of roads, so on. So, but at the same time, I should take this opportunity to thank all the bilateral donors and NGOs and the UN system for extending their hand to support and share our burden. In particular, I have already mentioned about the United States, which, according to my knowledge, is the largest contributor in ensuring humanitarian assistance to the Rohingya population staying in Bangladesh. What else did you want to know?
Okay, so we are moving on to audience questions. So thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for answering the questions from our team, prepared by our team. And so the first audience question relates to balancing between Myanmar and Bangladesh. So we've touched upon China and India and various other countries when as we've been talking about the Rohingya crisis. And how do you see them cooperating with Bangladesh and Myanmar at the same time regarding their return? I mean, China and India also have interests with Myanmar, economic interests, but at the same time, Bangladesh is an important ally. So how do you think they can and are balancing?
Are you asking this question to me or the audience?
No. This is for you. This is from the audience to you.
Okay. Yes. I mean, we understand that every country has the liberty to take care of its own perceived national interest first and foremost, and then try to help others. So we'll certainly want to engage the countries which are helping us on this issue and thank them. And the countries which are not being able to help us, will try to tell them that how we could help you, so that in which way we can help you so that next time you can help us. If we look at, or you are already helping us, how can you help a little bit more? So our diplomatic effort is there. We have seen the voting patterns in the UN General Assembly and other places too, forums too. So we know which country is taking which position. But we do not blame anybody for taking their position, because it is their sovereign right to vote or support or not support any particular country. But we'll continue to work with these allies and friends. As you said, we'll work more with the OIC countries, more with the countries you named, India, Japan, Australia, the members of Quad, and of course, China. Because we know that it is very important to be able to work with China to see a quicker solution to this problem. And we are engaged with China too.
Okay, so I guess then we'll have to see. That was not from me, that was from the audience. Another question from the audience is regarding Bhashan Char. So as you've been saying that a very conducive environment has been created, a lot of facilities have been given to people who are moving there. So why is it the case that many people are actually fleeing the island over the past few months? If the Bangladesh government is indeed guaranteeing that everything is safe, why is it the case?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and thank you for asking this question. In fact, I pointed out one problem, that there was the problem of livelihood. So now that the international community will be engaged more effectively in creating livelihood opportunities in the island, it will be much more attractive than before. If you have read the Bible, you know that God decided to send some kind of improved food items to the children of Israel, but they refused to continue with that food. They wanted onions and brinjal and so on. So what we do is that we serve a particular kind of food to the Rohingyas staying on the island, rationing the same way we do. Human nature is that they want diversity. They would like to go out, they would like to earn their own living, and so on. So I think this is one aspect. And the second aspect I will tell you that even if you look at Bangladesh or Mexico, for example, without throwing any aspersion to any country, given a choice, many of our citizens will leave our country to come to the United States. So it is human nature that they look for a better opportunity. And also, what I had mentioned before, that there is a very strong racket of human traffickers, and even they trade in sending out women. So whenever there is a refugee situation, you know that there are many adverse ramifications of this problem. So it is not, I mean, it is not unusual that there would be some trafficking in persons. There would be some people who try to leave the island for a better opportunity, and so on. So there is nothing wrong that uh, only the Rohingyas flee and none else flee. It's not true.
Okay, so now we will talk a little bit about 4 years ago, what happened 4 years ago. So, Madam Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina laid out a 5-point proposal in the UN General Assembly in 2017, which included establishing a UN-monitored safe zone within Myanmar. But it seems to be the case that Bangladesh is not pursuing that at this point in time. Has the government moved away from that proposal? And if there is some kind of a bilateral treaty with Myanmar, I mean, how would that figure in?
I think we have been trying all avenues to resolve this challenge. It's a huge diplomatic challenge for Bangladesh to see a permanent solution to this Rohingya crisis. It has economic, political, security dimension for us, and we will be prepared as the time goes to employ every tools that we have in our toolbox. But as the Honorable Prime Minister always emphasizes on the peaceful settlement of any problem that Bangladesh is engaged in, so we'll continue to work with Myanmar, with the international community, and of course we have not given up the proposal that has been given by the Honorable Prime Minister. You will see in the future how we come out with the follow-up, a more precise and sharp and follow-up on this proposal. But thank you for reminding me of this. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to remind you, but that's actually from the audience. So the next question is also related to Bhashan Char. It's about climate change. As you definitely know, that Bangladesh is one of the countries that's facing a lot of challenges with climate change, and at the same time, it has shown a lot of resilience. So with the Bhashan Char area, is it secure enough against challenges related to climate change regarding sea level rising and also natural disasters? The architect of the island actually said that, but we want to hear more from you.
Yes, I think there were some misperception about this island because if you translate the Bengali name of the island, Bhashan Char, it becomes some kind of floating island. Maybe it used to be true hundreds of years ago, but it is a stable island. And even during the last cyclone Amphan, there was no, I mean, the seawater rise and especially the tidal surge, that is the main problem in the coastal area. Uh, but it could not affect this island. And also there is the high embankment surrounding this island, and also the government is working with the international community to further raise this height of the, and also what we do in general in the coastal belt, which is that we construct cyclone shelters. It is a higher structure, and in the ground floor you don't have anything, but from first floor on you have the possibility of taking on board people during the cyclone and floods and tidal surges. In fact, we are doing the same thing for millions of Bangladeshis in our country. When there is a cyclone or tidal surge, we announce that you have to take shelter on these cyclone shelters. In normal circumstances, situation, these are used as schools, either primary school or middle school. So there is nothing, I mean, I would say that we are not giving any treatment to the Rohingyas on this island lower to what we give to our own nationals. At times, it is a little bit more that we are giving to them.
Okay, so we have a few more questions for you. And now we would like to ask you a question about private sector solutions. So in terms of refugee settlement, and are there any public-private sector partnerships that you would like to comment on?
I am not very familiar with this at this moment, what is happening within Bangladesh or elsewhere in the world, but I'm sure that after this conversation is over, this is an area where we'd attract the attention of our capital.
Okay, so the good that our conversation will be fruitful in that way. So we would also know about the gender-sensitive approach to this dealing with this refugee crisis. So as we know, the healthcare facilities in the camps have sections for women and children. We would like to know about the other kinds of gender-sensitive approach in addressing the issues regarding the Rohingya refugees that the government of Bangladesh and also the international community has taken.
I think if you want to get precise information on every aspect of this issue, you'll have to ask the aid workers and the health workers involved there. But as far as I know, that the initial problem was that many of the women and adolescent girls who crossed over from Myanmar, they were pregnant. And the government of Bangladesh had to establish necessary center to deal with these children, safe delivery and so on. So that was a sensitive area. They came without their fathers, so you can imagine that it was sensitive. And after that, of course, the usual healthcare clinics have been established, as you mentioned, and you already have mentioned that there is a separate section for women and children. So I am sure that the government is fully aware of the needs and requirements of all the sections of these unfortunate community. And also there are many health NGOs, both national and international, And I'm sure that the most modern approach will be taken vis-a-vis their requirements, not just what Bangladesh government alone thinks. So you can rest assured that these will be addressed and are being addressed.
Okay, and our very last question for you, and then we have to wrap up because you'll probably be out of time. So the last question is regarding the change in dialogue between the previous government in Myanmar before the coup and now. Has there been any changes in the kind of dialogue that the government of Bangladesh is having post-coup, pre-coup and post-coup?
You see, the government of Bangladesh, as I said, that we don't have any malice to any country. I mean, it is a policy which is not good. And we want to resolve these differences through dialogue and consultation with every country. And with Myanmar too, we were engaged in dialogue with the civilian government, and we were even prepared to continue this dialogue with the next government that came, uh, because this particular problem issue of Rohingyas is very, very important for us. And we can't wait for 5 to 10 years to see that another government is coming. So we'll continue our engagement with Myanmar in whatever way we can, because this is very important for us. And there are some, how to say, paradoxes, if you like, that in 1978 and in 1991, when there was two mass exodus of the Rohingyas into Bangladesh, and we conducted our dialogue with the military authority, military government, and the results were good. And then the civilian government came. It was there in 2017, 18, and so on. There was not much progress. So it is not always true that a particular form of government will be more efficient in resolving this kind of issue. So we have not really changed our position, and the final position, the bottom line remains the same, that the problem has been created by the Myanmar authorities, and it has to be resolved by the Myanmar authorities. Whatever the form of government is in place in Myanmar, that does not absolve Myanmar from resolving this issue.
Okay, so we're out of time and we have to wrap up. So thank you, and would like to begin by thanking you, of course, Your Excellency Ambassador M. Shahidul Islam, and your staff at the Bangladesh Embassy in Washington, D.C. for setting aside time from your busy schedule for this very important discussion. I would also like to thank Dr. Irfan Nuruddin, the director of the South Asia Center at the Atlantic Council, and the rest of his team at the Center for organizing this event. On the future of the Rohingya community, one of the biggest crises of our times, definitely. While the international community remains focused on addressing economic and social issues related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, vulnerable communities such as the Rohingya refugees continue to face a life of uncertainty. Bangladesh, as the host country, which has shared its limited resources, needs to be further assisted by the international community to help cope with the situation and to mitigate the disproportionate effects that the pandemic is having on the refugee and, of course, the host population. Just to add for our audience again, Bangladesh hosts about 1.1 million Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar, located in the southeastern part of its country. And this issue needs further attention from the international community for reaching a potential solution. To learn more about the Rohingya refugee crisis, we invite our viewers and audience to check out the South Asia Center's website, which has many commentaries and briefs on the refugee crisis. Finally, thank you to our audience for joining us from around the world and for patiently listening to us. Take care and bye, good night, and have a good day here in the US.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr.